Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for another video. Today I'm going to be talking more about The Witcher. Alright, so I have one other video on this channel where I'm reacting to a Falconry scene or a bunch of Falconry scenes from the TV show The Witcher. I don't consider that a book video, but I have had a few book videos on this channel, several of which were about House of the Dragon and how that show compared to the book Fire and Blood in the Game of Thrones universe. Somebody commented on there, do this for The Witcher. I was just doing scenes at that time, I wasn't doing the whole book. But I told them, I remember replying, like, there's no way. There's no way I can keep all of that stuff straight, like what happened when and all that stuff, but I'm gonna do it. I've read the first 4 books of the Witcher series, depending on which book you count from. I started with The Last Wish, and then went up through The Time of Contempt. I audio read those books. It's reading an audiobook, that's what I call it. And I'm a very visual person, so even though I've listened to or read all 4 books, I've watched the seasons 1, 2, and 3 probably 3 times. So what happens in the show sticks more stickily. So what happens in the show ends up being what I remember, at least remember first. So I do have a physical copy of The Last Wish, which is roughly what a lot of the first season is based on. I'll get more into that in a minute. Rather than try to do an entire book vlog, I decided to read kind of chapter by chapter for The Last Wish, because this is essentially a book of short stories. I have them all marked with a sticky, and then I couldn't find a bookmark, so I just used another sticky. So to make this faster, and also so that I can kind of reference each scene a little easier, I decided I'm going to try to record 1 chapter at a time. And I'm comparing the book to the show, but I'm going to focus on what happens in the book, because there's a lot more that happens in the show in parallel to what's in this. So I'm not going to go into Yennefer, Ciri, whatever's going on with them if it's not in the chapter that I'm talking about. Hopefully that makes sense. I got up today and did my makeup to run some errands and was going to film. I am filming. But when I got up, I felt really sick. But I don't want to take off all this makeup without getting something from that hard work, so I'm just gonna try to film this, but I apologize if my voice is weird. If I can get through the entire book chapter by chapter, eventually I can put all these videos into one. It's probably going to be several hours long, but then I'll have the entire book together. But rather than plan that out and wait, I'm at least going to get these chapters up. I thought this was kind of timely with the rumors of the 4th season of The Witcher about to happen. Everybody kind of feels like they went off the rails, but I couldn't tell you exactly how far they went off the rails with season 3. I mean, even season 2 they started to. I loved season 1 so much. I haven't played the games, so I don't have that perspective. If you do and you have some input on these videos, then please enter them, because I'd like to know. Thinking about maybe watching like a playthrough of the games or something. So yeah, I think the first of the Witcher series books that came out was called Blood of Elves. This is actually like a prequel. So I think if you look like on Goodreads, it says like 0.5, like The Witcher 0.5 or whatever, like before the first book. But there's a lot of info in here already. Just rereading it up through, I think I'm in like chapter 3 or something. I'm trying to pace myself so that I don't forget what I already read. Because I'm also working on the Dune 4 reading vlog right now, and it's a bit complicated, so I wanted to make this shorter. So I don't know if these technically are called chapters or not. They have different names and different numbers, but I'm just going to call them chapters based on chronological order. That being said, the very first 2 pages in here, it's called The Voice of Reason 1. and it's just 2 pages of a spicy scene. If this were the very first book that had come out, I think it's the author saying, hey, this is an adult story. It's not, like, extremely graphic, but I mean, it also kind of is. Like, you have to use your imagination to see what's happening, but at the same time, like, it's spicy. And it's the first time we hear of a witcher. We don't know who that person is yet, and we don't know who the girl is yet. I'll bring that back up when we find out who she actually is, but it's just, yeah, it's a sex scene. It's just 2 pages. So I kind of count that more as an intro than a chapter. So the actual next chapter, so what I'm going to call chapter 1, is just called The Witcher. Spoiler alerts, okay? There's going to be spoilers for all 3 seasons of The Witcher, probably, even though this is kind of like season 1-ish. The show and the books get very far apart, and there's stuff that's in here that's not in the seasons, and vice versa. So as it comes up, I'll be talking about spoilers. It's going to be too hard to keep spoilers out because I don't even know where the story is going to eventually end up. So yeah. That being said, chapter 1 is the story of Geralt battling the Striga. I say it's Striga. I don't know if it's Striga. Striga. That's what I heard in the show, right? So the Striga in the show, this is season 1 now, is actually episode 3. Chapter 1 in the book and episode 3 in the first season of the show deal with the Striga. However, the episode also has cutaways to Yennefer's situation, which is an incredible literal transformation in that episode, and a little bit of Ciri at the end, and some of the other players in this game that's going on. The very first scene of Geralt in the show is him battling a monster called the Kikimora, but then he goes to a town in a black cloak on his horse, and that's how this chapter starts as well. So the first time we kind of see Geralt, other than fighting a monster, is the same as how the book opens, but then it's a different city and a different tavern that they go into. He came on foot, leading his laden horse by the bridle. He actually rides into the town in the show. Later on, they show him leading his horse named Roach around. All of his horses are named Roach. It was hot, but the man had a black coat thrown over his shoulders. Basically, he looks similar to what the show presents him as. So they skip the sex scene in the beginning, and then they have him riding into a town in the same kinds of clothes with the horse. He goes into a tavern and then decides he's going to go into a smaller one, where basically people tell him to leave, don't like him, identify him as a witcher. They describe him having the all-white hair. Beneath his coat, he wore a worn leather jerkin laced up at the neck and shoulders. It's similar to what we see him as for the first time. He says he's looking for a room, and the innkeep finally recognized his accent, says he's Rivian. So we know he's of Rivia. We don't know his name yet in the book. And then some people gang up on him and don't like him, which happens in the show. There's a fight, and surprise, Geralt wins because he's badass. He only fights because he's provoked, though. They literally grab for his sword, and he, whips it and slashes him in the face. He's got more and more issues. They're really giving him a hard time now. They're telling him to leave, and he's like, yeah, okay, fine, I will. But they're still giving him a hard time. So for the first time, we hear about him drawing a sign, or casting a sign in the air. So he's got these little spells that he knows how to do. There is one in episode 1 where he just kind of blows people back off their feet. But there's different signs, and that's kind of throughout the lore, is the Witchers know how to draw these signs. After that, though, it kind of splits. In the show, he's in a city called Blaviken. God, it's like the worst name. It sounds like a sneeze. Blaviken. I don't want to be too hard on the names and stuff, though, because this is translated from Polish. The author is that name. But he's not in Blaviken in the book. So let's go back to the book, because that's basically where episode 1 isn't about what's in the book anymore. So in this subchapter 2, there's a dude named Velerad, castellan of Wyzim. That's the city they're in. I believe the country they're in is called Temeria. And yes, King Foltest of Temeria is kind of one of the focus characters in this chapter. In the book, Geralt is talking to these people because of basically a flyer that was kind of posted everywhere about them needing a monster hunter, basically. So it's a proclamation signed by Foltest. We do see the little, I'm calling it a flyer, I don't know what it's called, little announcement nailed to a sign in, I believe it's in episode 3 when Geralt's, entering into this situation. But before we see that, there's a sex scene with the prostitute, and the whore tells him about this situation. So I don't know if that's their effort to have a nod to this little intro first, but that doesn't happen in the book. He finds out on his own, and he's kind of already there talking to the dude, the Velerad dude, or whoever that is. We finally find that his name is Geralt, and they again say, "Oh, of Rivia, I gather from your accent." There's some hashing back and forth about money. This guy is really annoying, and he's not in here for long. In this conversation between Geralt and Velerad, Velerad tells him that Foltest has gotten his own sister pregnant. In the show, there was this big reveal of Geralt finding that out and them trying to keep it hush-hush because nobody knew yet. So in the book, he just comes right out and says it. After his coronation, Foltest surpassed himself. He got his own sister with child. To get to the point, he literally says this: "Suddenly there is Ada with a huge belly and Foltest talking about getting wed to his sister." This is the first time we hear of King Vizimir, who had wanted to marry Foltest's sister, Ada. Ada gave birth. She didn't survive the birth. The baby had also died immediately. But it says, "For 7 years after the funeral there was peace. Then one night, it was a full moon, there were screams in the palace. The infant had grown in the coffin, and in a word, she became a Striga." So they just go ahead and say it. There's no mystery about it. In the show, the very first scene is another witcher, a dark-haired witcher. Remember, this is episode 3, so we already know what witchers are. There's a dark-haired witcher that finds dead bodies that we eventually learned that the Striga had killed. He also finds these carcasses hanging from the ceiling. I'm not sure, but he dies in that scene. Later, in the show, they tell Geralt that the witcher ran off with the money. And then after that, Geralt finds out that the dude died. We saw him die, but Geralt doesn't find that out until later. And rather than think the Striga was killable, they wanted people to panic and think not even a witcher could kill this monster, because some people wanted the Striga alive, others wanted it killed because it was killing other people. In this chapter in the book, Velerad is the one that tells Geralt that a witcher did try to deal with the situation before and died. They just flat out say it. In the book, part of the reward, I'm trying to see who tells him first that they want to save her. See, I'm already getting confused between the two because there's a lot of differences. But part of the reward in the book is that not only is the Striga dealt with, but if they can fix her and remove the spell that caused her to be a Striga, Foltest said you can have her hand in marriage. Now they don't know if she's gonna look like a Striga still, but just kind of not, eat people. Yeah. There's a thing where Geralt says witchers don't take payment in advance. He says that in the show too. It's because they tell him that the last witcher that tried ran away with the money. So Geralt knows something's off with that, but he's trying to set it right, I guess. There's a bro code. So then there's subchapter 3, and Geralt actually gets to meet King Foltest. King Foltest. It says he was slim and had a too pretty face. In the show, he was kind of like a fat slob. Like, I hate to use the word fat, but like, he was heavy set and he was like eating like messily. Like, he wasn't a pretty face, let's just say that. So he's kind of like, I don't want to say a jerk in the book, but he definitely has a different personality than Foltest in the show. Although Foltest in the show is trying to keep this secret that the Striga is actually his daughter. There's 2 attendants in there with them. There's a Lord Segelin, not to be confused with Velerad, and an Ostrit. It looks like ostrich, but it's not. And they confirm that, they want him to reverse the spell on the Striga, not kill it. Foltest says, yeah, you're not marrying her afterwards, right? And that's basically fine. Like, he wasn't interested in that to begin with. He's interested in the money. I mean, the more we learn about Geralt, the more we learn that he does have a conscience, and he's kind of a softie sometimes. I don't know if the book's going to portray him in quite that way, but Henry Cavill did an amazing job. Segelin, one of the attendants, let's say, tells him it would suffice for someone to spend the night from sunset to the 3rd crowing of the cock by the sarcophagus. According to the book, the Striga, like the most Strigish Striga I've ever heard of, she's supposed to be 4 cubits high, which is, I believe, the distance from your fingertips to your elbow in, like, old medieval measurements. Shaped like a barrel of beer, has a maw which stretches from ear to ear and is full of dagger-like teeth, red eyes, and a red mop of hair. Her paws, with claws like a wildcat's, hang down to the ground. She moves with incredible speed and is far stronger for her height and build than one would expect. She's 14 years old. This poor girl. And Geralt asks if anyone she's attacked has survived. They say yes, and there's 2 people. And then Geralt wants to meet them and talk to them. So the comparison to what they depict the Striga in the show to be, she seems to be a bit taller than a regular person. Although in the silhouette scenes, I don't know, maybe she's not, but she's vaguely human shaped. She's not barrel chested, like, she's kind of feminine shaped actually. But the face, of course, they made very scary. I mean, she kind of has human looking teeth, just a little more pointy in the show. I didn't remember her having hair when I thought back to the show, but she actually does. Now, they make it all scary and in the dark, so I don't think we can tell that she has red hair. And it's more like corpse-looking hair. It's not like a red mop of hair like it talks about. Definitely sharp talons kind of situation, like they say. Geralt ends up talking to the survivors, but he doesn't really get anywhere or get any information that would be interesting. Foltest was like in disguise for one of these meetings, and Geralt tells him that the spell might be reversible, and unless he's mistaken, it can be done by spending the night at the palace. So when the rooster crows 3 times, basically, as long as the Striga is out of her sarcophagus, that'll end the spell. So Geralt already knows this. In the show, as Geralt is kind of being escorted out of the city, because this first, attempt at getting involved in this situation fails and they send him away, a mage appears named Triss, who I know is in the games. I believe she's in the books. See what I mean? I'm forgetting most of the book stuff already. It's been a few years, though, since I did read them, but Triss is not in this chapter at all. She's not involved in this situation at all. So she comes up and kind of tells Geralt, yeah, we want to save her, the Striga. And she kind of gives, it was kind of annoying when I rewatched it, she just kind of tells us the information that we're missing for the show. She has the bodies of people that the Striga killed, including the Witcher, and Geralt, examines it and says something about, it has to be a Striga because the heart and liver is gone. It's just all made up. It's not in here. So Triss is involved in the show. She even goes with Geralt to meet Foltest. In addition to him not being anything like what he's described in the book, he also has the deepest voice I've ever heard.
Your Highness, leave.
Like, seriously, what is up with that? It's crazy. In the show, they're kind of bouncing back and forth between what's going on with Yennefer and what's going on with Geralt and the Striga. I only bring this up, like, I'm not going to do comparisons of scenes because there's no scenes about that in here, but they do drop hints that in the show they have gone back in time. The first episode happens after the Striga situation, and in the book that's true too, because I did look ahead and make sure Blaviken was in here. Blaviken, just because it is later in the book, actually may happen before the Striga. I'm going to have to figure all that out when I get there. I haven't reached the Blaviken chapter yet. But they drop hints about characters in episode 1 that had to have taken place before episode 1. The characters were younger in episode 3. So that's another reason why it's hard to remember all the details for me, because like everything's in different timelines. But that's all I'm going to say about that before I get myself into like massive confusion here. Geralt says that he would have to stay with the Striga for 3 consecutive nights, not just 1. Geralt promises that he's not going to try to kill her without trying to save her, at least first. If he has to, he'll, save his own life. And then Foltest is like, well, after, if you're successful, what are we going to have after that? And Geralt knows that it's going to be a 14-year-old girl. Mentally, she has lived as a monster. She won't know royal society, to be sure, and that is similar in the show. In the show, they also go into the palace, I think, during the daytime, I guess, because the Striga is, like, in the palace that they were living in, and now nobody lives in, because there's Striga in it. They go through, Triss and Geralt go through some of the old things of the royal family, and they find letters from, like, that show that the mother was the one that was cursed or something. I don't know. It's not in here. Geralt says that the princess needs to wear a sapphire after this happens. I don't know if he's making that up or not. It kind of feels like he's like messing with him a little bit, but maybe. And Foltest is concerned. He says, how much truth is there in the rumor that the child is as she is because Ada was my sister? But Geralt says not much. A spell has to be cast. They don't cast themselves. So somebody did this to her. He says, I think the Congress with your sister was the reason the spell was cast, but this is the result of the spell, like not the fact that it just automatically happened because it was incest. Foltest wants to go with Geralt, and he's like, are you kidding me? Like, no. The king also says, I think that she is suffering, am I right? The Witcher fixed his penetrating eyes on the king. He didn't confirm it, didn't nod, didn't make the slightest gesture, but Foltest knew he knew the answer. So, I guess she's suffering. Next subchapter. There's mention of the Witcher's vials of potion that they usually have with them in some capacity. Geralt has 3, but he drinks 2. And he also reveals a silver sword. He says an incantation, drinks, again, 2 of the vials. His breathing suddenly quickened, became rasping and tense, and then stopped completely. In the show, there's a scene on the bridge into the palace before Geralt goes in. Foltest just suddenly says he's the dad in front of his soldiers. Triss is there. In the book, at this moment, Geralt realizes that some other dude is in there with him. The guy's name is Ostrit. We've met him before. We didn't know it. I don't think they ever say his name in the show. In the show, Geralt realizes that Ostrit was doing icky things in Ada's bed, like, even after she was, like, recently. So Geralt reveals that there was a thing that, in one direction, Ostrit had the hots for Ada. Ostrit was the one that said the curse. We learn a little bit more about what the potions do, like they allow him to see better in the dark. I mean, it's like an enhanced, set of skills. Ostrit wants Geralt to leave in the book. I just thought I saw the weirdest thing behind me in the camera. I think this is creeping me out a little bit. Yeah, Ostrit doesn't want him to kill her. He just wants Geralt to leave. And it basically says, and the reason why is none of your concern. And Geralt's like, what if I already know? It'll be easier to remove Foltest from the throne if the Striga frightens people even more. Ostrit makes the fatal mistake of threatening Geralt, trying to get him to leave, and Geralt just knocks him out. Then there's another subchapter. In the show, Ostrit gets knocked out after they're in the palace, and Geralt tells him, like, that he was finding icky things. And then the next time we see him, he's tied up in... I guess it's the same palace, right? It's just later in the day, so that does actually make sense. I was confused about that. I guess Geralt left and then came back, but Ostrit had been tied up there since earlier. Geralt is not yet aware in the show of how to break the curse. So he's threatening Ostrit with his life to tell him how to break the curse. Ostrit's a little piece of... Yeah. So he's like holding out, and then he's like, well, I may have accidentally said this incantation and bathed in the blood of a lamb or something. Yeah. So he eventually tells him what happened. He doesn't have to stay for 3 days in the show, which makes sense. They're not going to like keep that scene going for 3 days. Actually, there's a similar situation in the book now that I'm looking back at it. This is why I'm making these. He says that he loved Ada, and that he didn't cast any spells. Only once in anger did I say... And Geralt's just... This guy's just being insufferable, and Geralt's just like, okay, yeah, get to the point. Geralt already knows a lot more in the book. Geralt can hear the Striga leaving the sarcophagus, so he cuts the bonds of Ostrit and kind of looks to be letting him go. So Ostrit just tries to leave, but the Striga catches up with him. I don't think they get very graphic about that, actually. In the show, the dude stays tied up and the Striga comes in and kills him. That's the first reveal that we get of the Striga and what she's gonna look like. It's pretty spectacular, honestly. It really is. But it's special effects. I don't know if it's CGI or if it's prosthetics or a combination of both, but, you know, they're gonna have a shortened budget for these monsters in the show. And that comes into play next as well. Geralt is in the book, you know, getting ready for this battle. And then he saw her. This description had been accurate. The disproportionately large head set on a short neck was surrounded by a tangled, curly halo of reddish hair. Her eyes shone in the darkness like an animal's. She opened her jaws. There was pointed white teeth, and then snapped them shut with a crack like a chest being closed. And then they describe some of the battle. He reveals the silver sword, and they have back and forth with that. We find that the silver was fatal to the Striga, as it was for most monsters brought into existence through magic. Then he's kind of sizing her up and like trying to judge, you know, by her movements and by her response, like what he's actually dealing with here. And he brings out a long silver chain, which now we know silver affects the monsters. He slowly unwound it, was weighted at the end, and he wraps her up in it, you know, swings it at her. In the battle, after we see the Striga for the first time, there's, you know, the scary reveal with Ostrit tied up, but then we actually see her, you know, revealed a little bit at a time as she enters into the battle with the Witcher. But Geralt in the show starts with this chain. And predictably, after she's wrapped up in the chain, she just shatters it. And in the show, Geralt says his most famous line, which is, fuck. The other one is, And you know what? I'm not going to judge. I'm judging. I'm not going to judge Liam Hemsworth completely until I hear him say fuck and If he can pull that off, I might be okay with season 4. I doubt it, but I'm still gonna watch at least the beginning of it. Anywho, I had to address that at some point, right? So Geralt does a sign, and it holds her, but not for long. You know, he's finding out, it's really good monster story writing. He's finding out that she's, you know, way more of an opponent than he thought. You know, the sign, he says he did not expect such a simple sign to paralyze the Striga entirely, but neither did he expect the beast to overcome it so easily. And then they're fighting again, she's roaring again. There was a thing where, like, she might be blind, but it was more just, I don't know, it was like kind of battle strategy stuff. And then in the book here, he, like, basically gets her to leave by being really, really angry and, like, staring at her. His eyes lit up with an ominous glow. A hoarse roar tore through his clenched teeth with Geralt. The Striga backed away, pushed by the power of concentrated hatred, anger, and violence, which emanated from the attacking man and struck her in waves, penetrating her mind and body. It wasn't in the show. This battle scene, I guess it's a battle scene. It's not like soldiers, but it's a Witcher's battle scene. In the show, it's intercut with things that are going on with Yennefer. Again, that is not in this chapter at all. Honestly, I don't even know if Yennefer's in this book. I don't remember. I know she's in the books, but I don't know where she comes in. And I don't know her timeline, that if the show is, you know, actually correct in the Striga battle is happening at the same time as literally Yennefer's transformation. And it's really, really well done, because the screams are, like, back and forth between the two of them. It's really establishing the bond that, like, is eventually going to happen, you know. Actually, I think she has to be in this, because it's called The Last Wish. I just realized. Okay, she's got to be at least in here near the end. Yep, she is. Okay, anyway, so we don't have Yennefer in the book yet, but yeah, the screams and the, like, gore a little bit, and, like, it's really well done. It's a well done episode. One of the, like, battle-y things that Geralt has in the show is, like, these, like, brass knuckles or silver knuckles, maybe, in the shape of wolves. That's kind of cool, but they're not in the book. And then it kind of happens the same in the book. He pulls the third vial and drinks it of potion, climbed into the tomb and stretched out in it himself. He notices that it's a double tomb for mother and daughter. Once he's in there, he traces a sign and basically it seals it. And then he has a little tiny hourglass, which turns out in the next little subchapter here that starts just after this, when he awakens, I guess from the potion wearing off, he can look at the hourglass and realize how much time has gone by. So enough time has gone by for him to come out. He doesn't know exactly how much, because it was the sand was out. In the show, he does get in the coffin, and they don't mention specifically that it's like a double wide, but we do see that in the show, that it's a wide coffin. So that was, you know, a little nod without actually having to explain it, I guess. They're still battling in the show, though, and the vial is broken, but he gets in the sarcophagus and makes a sign. All right? And then, as he comes out, it's been morning, so it seems like he's just in here for a day, so I don't know what they said about 3 days consecutively. It didn't seem like he actually did that in the book, and they definitely didn't do it in the show. I'm pointing over here because my computer's over here with my notes. He comes out of the tomb, and she's a girl. She's no longer a Striga. She was lying on her back next to the tomb, naked and unconscious. She had the flaxen red hair. And in the show, I'd say that's pretty accurate. I don't know if I can actually show pictures of her, because she's covered in gore, but I think they do have the rooster crow in the show as well. I wrote something down about it. He's cautious coming out of the tomb and seeing her. He's not sure what he's going to be dealing with, or if she's still dangerous or anything. But we see in the show a long moment of Geralt kind of obviously thinking and working things out to himself, and we see a clear change to empathy and sympathy. Pity, too. You know, she's just looks like a harmless little girl lying in a pool of blood, like it's, you know, their blood. when he approaches, she wakes up and takes a huge swipe at him and, like, injures him badly. They kind of wrestle around, and somehow he ends up with a horrible neck wound, and that does happen in the show as well. He does, like, wrestle with her and pin her down. He bites her in the neck, I guess to, like, stop her from struggling or hurting him more, especially because he's losing blood really quickly. He tries to, like, tear his clothing. It says his tunic, so I guess he's not just wearing the leather armor, but to, like, fasten around his neck to, like, try and heal it because he's losing a lot of blood. And then he passes out in the book. There's another subchapter, but he passes out. In the show, the little girl still has claws. I guess, like, the transformation is not absolutely complete yet. Because she does end up turning into a normal 14-year-old, normal-looking 14-year-old. I wouldn't say she's got a normal, mental health situation going on. But things are basically the same at the end result of this battle with the Striga. She does turn into the princess again. In the book, the last page of this chapter, Geralt starts to wake up, and this Velerad dude is healing him. He's kind of out of it, and he's saying, "Where's my sword?" And Velerad's like, yes, of course. Like, we've got your sword. Don't worry about it. He finds out he's been out of it for 2 days. She slit your neck open quite thoroughly. One could see everything you have inside there. You've lost a great deal of blood. Geralt's still really out of it, but he asks about the princess, and Velerad tells him the princess is like a princess. Thin and somewhat dull-witted, mentally delayed, which I would imagine she would be. She weeps. Foltest says this will change, and he says, "I don't think it'll change for the worse. Do you, Geralt?" He asks, "Why did you try to bite her?" But Geralt falls asleep. He still is, like, horribly injured at that point. And that's the end of the chapter in the book. So it's just the Striga. It's Velerad instead of Triss, because in the show, Triss is healing him as he starts to wake up after this battle. Triss says that the princess has been sent to the temple of Melitele, which we're going to see in the book in the next chapter, but I'm not going to talk about today. She tells him that Ostrit, the dude who was tied up and died, got credit for this rescue somehow. I don't know, that really sucks. But I think it's kind of meant to be character development for Geralt, where it's like, yeah, I do all this work and I have all this empathy, but I don't ever get credit for it. So, I mean, poor Geralt, he's really been through it. I don't know if I mentioned yet that he is, like, way older than a regular human. I don't know his exact age during this situation, but in the show, at some point in the first few episodes, it's implied that he's like 90 or 100 years old. So he's, he's been through it. He's gotten used to people thinking that he's the monster when he's actually the monster hunter. And, it's amazing that he still has any, like, empathy left in him after how badly he's been treated. But that's kind of why we love Geralt as a main character and a hero, at least, from our perspective. So the end of the episode cuts to Ciri. Ciri is not in this chapter at all. Ciri, I really don't know if she's in this book. She might be kind of alluded to. But yeah, that's the book, the first chapter plus the intro, which mostly revolves around the Striga. Different in the show, but close enough that I understand the changes a bit so far. But I will continue to try to make these. This is already half an hour long, and this is the second video I've made, so they're a lot longer than I thought, but I think the next chapter is only like a few pages, so that video should be a little shorter. I want to do these for myself mostly, so that when the new season comes out, if something has changed, maybe, I'll have some idea what's supposed to be going on. I also really want to read the rest of the series so that I know what ends up happening to these characters. I don't know if the show is actually going to show, like, enough of the ending, or pull a Game of Thrones and be, like, totally rushed and confusing, because it's like getting unpopular now. So yeah, but I mean, obviously if I'm posting it, it's also so that I hope other people will enjoy it. So if you like this kind of content, let me know. My channel, FlyOn, is art and animals, and I do consider, you know, books and literature and reading art. I don't usually do book content, but this was motivating me to do something today, and the past few days, life has been really difficult all of a sudden here, and I'm gonna be, I don't know when this is gonna get posted, but I'm gonna be needing to miss posts, and I want to continue the channel but not put the pressure on myself with everything else that's going on. It's been so stressful that I think that's partly why I'm ill today. It's just wearing me down. Also, I'm around coworkers now, not even a week straight, and I'm sick, so could be from, you know, people being forced to interact, or, you know, my body just being worn down, or combination of both. So this has helped. Glad to have this little chat. Subscribe if you want to see more like this. I'm gonna at least go through this first book, and we'll see where that ends up. So yeah, hope to see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye. Geralt. Sorry if you can hear a fire truck. And sorceresses? Beneath his coat, he wore a... my brain. I don't know if it's called a country, but there's a king. King Foltest. This is gonna be rough. Foltests. Shaped like a barrel of beer. What did I just say? Foltest is concerned that... No, not yet. I can't believe how much longer this is taking than I thought. But he comes out of the coffin. Whoa. It's like birds that almost flew into the window. Close enough that I understand the changes. I don't like the way that